Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're talking about The Lord of the Rings, Return to Moria. This is a survival crafting game, which is unusual for me, because these are not really the sort of games that I play a lot of and or enjoy, and a lot of the time when I see stuff like this I kind of get turned off. But yeah, it was a bit random. I was looking for a new game to play with friends, and essentially this popped up on Steam, and I was looking at it and going, oh, this could kind of be fun, you know, like, because it's Lord of the Rings as well, and I quite like Lord of the Rings. I'm not like a die-hard fan, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the films, the book, and all that sort. And there's good Lord of the Rings games out there, and I was looking for, something for just like a 4-player game, or something for the multiplayer anyway, and this kind of popped up, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And so I want to preface this by saying that I am not experienced with survival and crafting games. The only game I can think of that I've played that's like similar to this is a game called Astroneer, which is far more complicated, and you know, I enjoyed that game. I thought the game was very cute for what it was. I thought it was a lot of fun, but that's a lot more involved. There's a lot to think about, and that's obviously sci-fi. That's a space game. This is more fantasy and more grounded in that kind of reality, if you will. And so what is this game? So it is essentially you are playing dwarves returning to Moria, finding out what's going on in there in the mines, and going through these underneath this mountains, and exploring and surviving and crafting and finding out why there's darkness being emitted from the ground. There's why there are orcs still under there, you know, and essentially exploring these various different realms, essentially. And what makes this game, I think, one of the big reasons for me enjoying this game, actually, is that you can play this in a sandbox mode. You can just do whatever, but it has like a story mode to it, and the story is, you know, it's not the most involved thing ever. Like, you've got cutscenes, you'll come across a ton of journal entries and things like that, but the story gives enough intrigue. Like, you're trapped down here, you can't escape, you need to progress in these different directions, and every time you hit a new area, you know, visually it might look very different. It might be that you find elements of like the Fellowship when they were there. You might find other elements of things going on. And that story, that sort of drip feed of story going, you need to head here, this is your next destination, actually kind of really helped me, or like so far, to enjoy what I've been playing, to enjoy that little bit of grind that you find with these games, where you have to get the resources, build things, and upgrade stuff, and so on and so forth. I have put about 20 hours into this game, so I'm not. Apparently, it's about a 30 to 35 hour game, you know, so I'm over halfway most likely. But the game's doing a good job of keeping me, the player, interested. As somebody who has not played a lot of these games, I'm finding that it's very easy to follow what I can build, what resources I need, the upgrades I need for stuff like that. And also with that story and the different areas to explore, keeps me intrigued, keeps me like, oh, what's around the corner, what can I do here, you know. And there's a lot of stuff like that in this game. So, you know, obviously the story, a big push, right? Story really helps, pushes you in a direction that I'm finding it very interesting. There's also environmental storytelling. Like, as you're playing through this, you start off in what I assume is Moria, like a village or a town, or just one area. And I will say, I'm not a big fan of the starting area. It's very dark, and it doesn't really show off what comes later in the game. So, as you progress through these different areas, they're very different. Sometimes like, you find like an elven part of it, which is all luscious and green, and there's like trees and these grand buildings and this big forge and stuff. And that's like actually quite a nice area visually, and like I think that area is better than the first area. But then after that, you go into the mines, you go into the mines of Moria, and they're massive, and there's tons of places to go and explore in there. And because there is like seeded generation in this game, not everything's the same every time. The map isn't always going to be the same. You're not going to find things in the same place. And because of the way the game works, like, I get the first area is like a tutorial area. It's teaching you like very basic resources, how to build a base, a few goblins, just, you know, things on a smaller scale. I think the actual design of the first area just feels a bit flat compared to the rest of it. But once you hit the Elven Quarter, once you hit the mines, after that you got this Crystal Descent, which is this beautiful like hole in the ground with these crystals sticking out, and you go down there, and then you've got the crystal like cavernous area, which is again like the mines, is massive, and you're exploring all that. the actual like storytelling as you're going through, as well as the different environments, really helps push the player on. There's so much intrigue. You're like, what's around the corner? What are we going to bump into next? You know, and then at the point where I'm at, we're going back up and we've hit this huge city, and it's like, wow, and it's like the scale of everything in this game is really well done. So I can't, you know, commend them on that. And like, what I really enjoyed about this game so far is it's like I said about the crafting element of it. It's very basic, or at least starts off very basic, where it's like, right, you need these resources to build a half. A half essentially allows you, once you've built a half of varying sizes, it gives you an area to build essentially a camp. So then you can build up your own little like forward bases. You can build bigger ones. There's forges that you find in this game where we have all just set up camp around there. But then you get to like build up, you know, the lighting that you want, you know, all these things I'm sure in other crafting games. But for me, it was like, it felt like it wasn't too complex. And then as you build these things, you unlock more recipes or you unlock more stuff. So it's that typical tiered leveling of like, right, if you build this thing, it unlocks these things. You build these things, these unlock these things. And as you go through and you get better resources, you can build a bigger half, you can build better armor, better weapons, all the sort of standard stuff. It just feels like this game has done it in a way, for me personally, where I don't feel like I'm being overwhelmed by it. It seems simple enough. When you bring up the build menu, you've got your different tabs at the top. So you have your building essentials, which are your lighting, you have like rope ladders, you have wooden platforms, you can build piers, and that sort of stuff is there so that you can use around the environment wherever you want. Especially the wall lighting, which is incredibly useful, but you can put, basically, you have these things that command, like quick build usually brings up platforms. And I will say that one thing every game should do, and I'm sure other games do this, but this is so useful. If you've got wooden scrap on you, you can build a quick platform and you can basically create stairs and bridges and shit wherever you are. And it's like the most useful thing, honestly, the most useful thing in like the entire game, just being able to get around, because you kind of need it. Like, you're like, oh, I can't quite make that jump. And one thing I appreciate is the dwarves are quite stumpy, so they can't jump very far. So you can use these platforms and things to at any point, as long as you've got the resources on you. And there's also this darkness stuff, which is like this main sort of evil void stuff that happens, and you come across it on the floor, so you can build around it and things like that. So there's like, I find that the options that you've got there are really good, and everything that you do upgrade to as well when you're in the base is, well, it feels right for the time. It's like, oh, you've got this, you add a bellows to your smelter, you can now smelt things because you can get it hotter, things like that. So there's always something to work towards, and I think that's what, that's what these games are about, right? They're always giving you stuff to work towards. They're giving you like, here's new recipes. If you have these food items, you can make these types of meals. These are the different upgrades for it. Like, for example, you can cook on the hearth. You can then get like a roasting pit, and then you can also get an oven, and the oven allows you to take food on the go that can help you, so you can be out in the field longer. And then you have obviously your standard survival mechanics. You've got your eating bar, you have your energy, and then your stamina. So the way that works is you have an energy bar that slowly depletes over time. The lower the energy bar, the lower the stamina can be. And then you have your food bar, which mainly comes into effect when you're fast traveling a lot, because when you're fast traveling, you take a hit to the food bar, but that's essentially how long you can stay out and about. So as long as you can balance those resources, you can be out for a while. The day-night cycle, and the way that works is you have like morning all the way through to nighttime, and then but it has these like other ones like nighttime, early evening, all this sort of stuff. And what's cool there is that if you eat certain foods at certain times of the day, they'll get an extra buff. And then when you're out like properly, like at sort of early hours in the morning, it gets very cold and you can't fight as well. And there's all these different elements you have to think about. And quite frankly, it all comes together in a way that doesn't, like I said, doesn't feel confusing. I'm very, very much a noob to a lot of this stuff, and I was like, okay, I understand the mechanics here, I understand what I'm doing, and it never felt overwhelming. Like, for example, later on, when you get to the mines, so you've been dealing with goblins for most of the time, you get to the mines, you've got this sound bar in the bottom right, and as that sound bar, like, the more you mine, the more noise you make, that causes a horde of orcs to find out where you are and attack you. And that's a really interesting mechanic, because obviously if you leave those areas, you're like, right, I'm going back to base or whatever. You can wait for that to like cool down again. So it's this risk reward of like, how much do you mine, how much are you willing to like do it? Because you can run away from the horde fairly easily, it's not difficult. But there's all these things you're constantly balancing, but because of the setting and because I've been playing this with friends specifically, I've never, like, it's all just been, right, we're gathering resources, we're all going to venture to here, we're all going to do this sort of stuff. Like, it's really, I really appreciate that, like, going off and doing different things, or we've been playing it 4-player, so you have 2 people going to go adventure forward, 2 people are going to go collect resources or work on constructing stuff, and, like, we obviously have a little bit, we mess around in the game, do some dumb stuff and whatnot. But it's nice when this also leads to us creating different items for each other. Oh, you need an upgraded hammer? Don't worry, I'll sort that out for you. Go off and sort this out. So the crafting side and the survival side of things, I keep calling this game survival light because it doesn't feel that heavy on you in terms of, like, it's not that punishing when it comes to keeping the food. Like, you can put the difficulty up. Like, we're playing on normal, there is a hard difficulty. I'm sure you'd have to be a bit more manageable of those things. But I think I like it how it is. Like, I never really like it when you have those food and water gauges in most games. This one doesn't have a water one, it's just food. And that alone isn't too much of a problem. And I quite like that. It's just there. It's just a reminder that if you're hungry, you'll start taking damage. But, for the most part, you can play for a good while without it being an issue. And I appreciate that. One thing that this game has, and it's things like this that makes me really appreciate. So, because you're dwarves, and you mine in this game, and that's very fitting. While you're mining, it will come up and it will say like start singing. And you hit the button while you're mining, and your character will start singing a song. Now, what's even cooler is if you've got multiple people playing, one of you starts singing, and the rest of you can join in. You get these incredible harmonies, and like they'll sing verses of these different songs. And what that does is, and the reason why you should do that, is that it then gives you a buff to ore digging. So there's a ton of different buffs you can get in the game. It could be well rested, so you use less stamina and things. It could be that you eating, your food goes down slower. It could be that your stamina goes down slower. But when you get, like, I think it's like ore inspired, I think it's called, like as in ore that you dig. It essentially just means that you can dig things quicker and out the wall. But the singing side of things is a big part of this game. Like when you create these lights, I think they're called Durin's lights or something. I can't remember. As you create those, you have to sing to those, and that helps inspire you, and that helps push back the darkness. There's a big I guess tomb thing that we found, and you sing in front of that. Like, singing is a really integral part of this game, and it honestly just is it's a level of charm. Sometimes games go hard in a certain direction, and they didn't have to, and they do, and it just brings like a smile to my face because it's like, this is a really, really cool mechanic. And it also gives you a buff, so there's always a reason to do it, and you get to hear all these different verses of the different songs. There's a good handful of songs that they'll sing, and it's just one of those mechanics that it's just... I know some people might get annoyed at it later on, but quite frankly, every time it pops up, and I'm like, yeah, let me sing, because one, I can dig quicker afterwards, but also you get to hear a group of dwarves singing whatever they're, over about drinking or eating or whatever else it might be, and I'm like, this is great. This is exactly the kind of thing like a game like this should have, where it's like, yeah, the thing with this game is, I'm sure compared to other survival games that have been about longer, this is quite basic. I'm not saying the game is basic, but compared to other games, it's probably quite basic. So how do you do that? You focus on the setting, which is Lord of the Rings in those mines. You're playing as dwarves. What can we do to improve on that? Oh, we'll make them sing, because that's the thing that they do. And yeah, ultimately, I think that really helps the charm of the game. So it's one of those things that I'm very much happy to see there as well. I mean, those are the main points. Those are the main points that make this game, to me, an enjoyable experience. A drip fed story, drip fed upgrades, all these things that are just it's not like, oh my god, I'm overwhelmed by so much stuff. It's like, no, here you go, take your time, do these things, progress here, finding things on the floor, there's new recipes, or finding new forges, you can now get better armor, all this sort of stuff. You then have the fact that the environments are large scale environments, and the cool thing is you can go off and find different things, and then on top of that, they're very different environments and very varied. And then obviously playing with friends, which should be, any game is better with friends, right? Most games are better with friends, not every game, but that really helps with the game. However, there are a couple things here that do impact this experience I've had with it. It's not all hunky-dory. As much as I love the charm and the feel of this game and the lore and all this other stuff, there are some things that need addressing. First of all, performance. Now, this is very varied. Sometimes when you load into an area for the first time, or you teleport to an area, you'll get some massive stutter, spikes, drops in frames, all that sort of stuff. Going to certain areas, you've built up a base. If you've got a lot going on there, it's very obvious that the game will drop in frame rate. So performance at certain times is considerably kind of bad. There's no beating around the bush there, it just happens, and that's a problem, and the game needs patching, and it definitely needs smoothing out with a lot of these things. I know that, you know, it's probably a smaller team. I haven't actually looked at who made this game, I probably should do that, but it definitely needs smoothing out, because if you're in the middle of a fight when you have a orc horde coming and stuff and the game starts tanking in frame rate, it can make combat a bit more difficult. Which is a nice segue onto combat. Combat in this game is very basic. It's you basically swing whatever weapon you've got, or stab with whatever weapon you've got, and then you hold for a power attack. The one thing that does make combat interesting is the ability to dodge roll, and the fact that you have movement abilities. You can also have a shield. If you block with a shield or a weapon at the perfect, or not the perfect time, you've got a massive window to do it. You can stagger enemies, which I will say does make the combat for the most part significantly easy, but the way that they balance that out is by shoving a ton of enemies on screen. It's not the greatest combat in the world. It looks fun. It's got great damage numbers. It's fun when you can add like lightning and different elements to your weapons, which is a cool idea, and knock the orcs and stuff away. There are things there. You can shield bash, you can kick and stuff. It's all flash and no actual substance really. It's, oh, I'm doing a cool animation and this orc's gone flying, but the reason it's difficult is there's like 10, 12, 15 orcs on screen and I'm trying to dodge around and do it. Again, when you've got friends, it's easier to take on, you know, more of them, but it is very basic, which isn't necessarily a problem, but don't expect great combat from this game. One thing that is more of a me problem, I think, but it's worth bringing up. As you progress through the game and you find different resources, coal, silver, gold, iron ore, all this sort of stuff, it's very obvious in the wall where you can dig. What isn't particularly obvious is what resource is what resource. Now you do have a button you can hit that will bring up like a call out button, so you can tag stuff, and it will tell you what's there. But ultimately, I'm like, they could maybe have done a better job of highlighting or making them look a bit more fancy. It's not the end of the world on it. It's just maybe one of those things where I'm like, oh, I don't know what this is, and then I hover the mouse over it, or I go up close to it and I'm like, oh, it's this particular resource. Salt is one of the few ones that's easy enough to see, but yeah, just more of a minor complaint, that one. Altogether, I think this game is a fun experience. I've had a really good blast with it. Like, I'm enjoying the fact that it's something a little bit different, something I wouldn't normally play, and the charm of the story that's being told, the lore that's here, running around with other players, I'm having a good time. And I'm sure, like, once I hit the end game, like, once we get to the point where we can complete the story, I'd probably be done with it. It's not something that I think has got a lot of sticking power. But for right now, I got it for £16 when it came out, and it's probably about 20% off, I think. So it's probably, what, 20 quid normally? I enjoying what I'm getting out of it. I think the game is a very fine game. I do think that some reviews are a little harsh on it, but, again, I'm coming at this from somebody who doesn't play a lot of survival / crafting games, right? So I'm having fun with it. I think it's a fine game. This game will like to go on sale very often, and when it does, pick it up, play it with some friends, put your 30 to 35 hours into it, have your feel, and then move on to something else. But if you are somebody who's like a survival or crafting expert and you've played all the other games around the block, then maybe this isn't for you. But the theme of Lord of the Rings definitely helps push it along, and that's added story helps. So that's kind of where I stand on it. And altogether, I think it's fun. I'm having fun, and that's what matters, right? So anyway, that's going to do it for me today then, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, then hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always. And until next video, I will see you then.